Hello, this is Chris Jansen. Welcome to the End Evil podcast. Evil is the destruction of freedom. That's a quote from the book, The End of All Evil, which was the inspiration for the End Evil podcast. The End Evil podcast is dedicated to trying to end evil whenever and wherever possible. I came to the recognition many years ago that we're living in a world that is just chock full of evil deeds and mistruths and lies. And what has been encouraging for me in the last couple of years is meeting other people online that see these problems in the world and that are actually trying to do something about it. I've been pretty inspired by Melisa Arnautovic, who's with me here today to have a conversation. Thanks for coming, Melisa. And I really appreciate what you've been doing online with the little talks you give, just with letting yourself free and talking to people about what's going on, and your attitude's pretty positive and exciting, and I really appreciate it. So thanks for joining me for the End Evil podcast.
Oh, it's a pleasure, Chris. Thank you for having me. And I do love, by the way, that it's called End Evil based on that book. I also think that's an incredible book and very life-changing too.
Yeah, and so why don't you, maybe we'll start by just kind of giving listeners a little introduction to yourself, like your journey. What brought you to you do like coaching, mentoring, correct?
Training and workshops, not so much coaching. So if you imagine like if you've ever attended a workshop where there's a group of like 15, 20 people and you're having a training where you're learning new skills. Just the skills that I teach are not technical skills. I call them human skills. So everything to do with things like what we need actually in real life, right? Because technical skills, anyone can learn them. They're just repetitive. It's robotic. So you can actually teach anybody a technical skill. But human skills take more time. They're more nuanced because you're dealing with human beings. And human beings aren't always 100% predictable like a program, unless, of course, they're very unconscious. But that's another story. So workshops, and I have like online courses and so on for self-mastery. So it's more this, it's really about building your skill sets for life. So it could be communication skills, it can be presentation skills, it can be empathy skills. Leadership was a big one I did for a while, but self-leadership as well. And all team workshops I've done with people too. I do that quite often. So purpose, like how do people have a group purpose together to work together, identifying your strengths and how to master them, because I do believe everybody has innate strengths. You just need to know what they are, and then you can work on them and you get exponentially better. Whereas when people focus on weaknesses, they can get a little bit better at them, but they'll always get to just like an average point at everything. And they'll never really excel in anything. And on top of that, they won't enjoy it. So how you know something is a strength is it's actually something you also, first, you're really good at it, you enjoy it, and it's like time stands still and you feel energized when you're doing it. That's a strength. And so when people know their strengths and you build on them, which you can, you're not born perfect with your strengths, you keep building on them, then, you become limitless. So workshops and courses.
Excellent. And that what I really like about what you're describing is that it's about self-discovery and working on the self. And that's something I really try to hammer on in my podcast, that's the most important thing for all of us to be doing. So it occurred to me it'd be interesting to kind of hear your journey of what brought you to that, of realizing you need your job, or what you want to do with your time is help other people discover how to be a better version of themselves, basically, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, what kind of led you down that path?
What led me down that path was, so I started full-time work super early. I was like 17, and I was working in the corporate world full-time in big jobs with lots of responsibility for like 14 years before I left the corporate world and then became self-employed, if you will. Like I run my own business. So as in no one manages me or pays me. I am my own boss since 2.5, 3 years, just before all of this went down. And though every single time, any job I did, from the very first job I ever did, I was always given the role of being the trainer of new starters. So it's something that kind of always, like, it just kind of naturally came to me, this teaching aspect. I've always been Firstly, because one of my core values is learning and personal growth. That's a core value of mine. Like that really drives me in life. So when I want to learn something new, let's say it's a new job, I want to know everything I need to know about that job, like to become really great at it. Like I just genuinely enjoy that process. So for me, it started off straight away. Every time I would have a new position or job in a company, I would also be the person that would onboard and train others. And then eventually, as time went past, again, I went through different roles. I was in sales roles, marketing roles, but always in headquarters, okay? Meaning I've never been like a salesperson on the street. I've always had to deal with, if you've ever worked in a headquarter of large multi-billion industry corporations, it's a pretty huge, there's a lot going on. There's a lot of complexity. You have a lot of responsibility. You have to make really hardcore decisions that actually affect people's livelihoods. I had to do that for entire countries. So I would go and fly. I flew around the whole world, and I would fly to a country, sit with the executive team, and basically plan out a strategy for how the entire country would be set up in terms of the operations team, the sales team, the marketing team, and so on, and then how to train them and onboard them. So there was always an aspect of training in my roles. And even if it was like 10%, 20%, it would always slowly kind of increase. And it was the part I was always really drawn to. I loved all the other stuff too, but I really enjoyed that part of training and yeah, people discovering more of themselves and becoming more aligned with that, and like not feeling like they're just at a job doing stuff that they're supposed to do, you know, like that drains people. So I then developed entire programs, like training programs that would go, like, let's say a new person joins and they would have a 1 to 2 year training program in terms of different skills they would learn throughout the 2 years that will enhance their career in any which way, like so many different ways. And I rolled that out globally. So I would travel to lots of countries and then deliver the training. So not only would I create the entire training program, so that's also why I have online courses. They're not just me talking. It's like an actual structure with, I understand how to make learning design. So how does somebody learn something in a way that's really effective? Not just, you know, I'm talking at you, but how do I give you certain practices, certain exercises, certain tools that you then have to utilize, that then you get that aha and you start to integrate it and start to actually become it, right? So yes, it was always kind of integrated, and I was working more and more and more of it. And then eventually I just knew it was something I had to do like fully, like I wanted to fully focus on that. I was actually, long story short, basically offered a role that was going to be head of learning and development in one of the previous companies I left just before becoming like my own boss. But it just didn't feel right because I was always very restricted. When you're in the system, you're restricted to the system. So you're still not going to be able to do things fully the way that you want to do them and how you think you can best affect, you know, people. And whilst, of course, I was able to help many, many people in the years that I was working in corporate and in the system, I knew I would never be able to do it to the grand scale I can by being free, as in not being employed by anybody. And there is a huge difference there. Because when I broke free from that as well, even in my own growth and personal sort of growth, I uncovered so much more of my own strengths and talent that I couldn't have even imagined when I was in corporate, because you're always being, you know, whoever is above you, right? There's always somebody above you. Whoever is above you has always got some kind of agenda, and they're always trying to interfere in some way. So you're never really able to fully blossom into your true self. You always have to kind of be pleasing someone else. And anyone who has a job can relate to that. Like with a boss, you know, you always have to answer to someone, right? And it's not necessarily always going to be in your best interest. So in the shorts, that's what that was. And then as I fully was then able to use my creativity and create the trainings that I wanted, and when I would get my own clients, like I would work with companies or with individuals. But like, let's say a company would approach me and says they want a training program for their teams. And then I will like come up with it from scratch. I love that. That process to me is such a creative process. Like I'll be doing it for hours and like time stands still for me. Like it's flow state. So that's my jam, you know, that's the kind of, and that feeling is what I want everyone to be able to know how to feel. Because when you do that, when everyone is working from a place that they feel like they're on purpose, that they're enjoying it, and they're delivering something meaningful to the world, well, it's a win-win-win, right? That's the thing. what I'm saying is we don't have to be in a world where, 95% of the population is miserable, hates their jobs, and does it just because they need it to live, right? Which is the truth, let's be honest, right? It's very few people that aren't trapped in that kind of dynamic. So yes, that became more and more important to me, and even more so having seen the results of doing it over the last 2.5 or so years. I would never go back like to a job. Like, I know that this was what I was supposed to be doing, and also the potential that you have when you are no longer enslaved by anyone. It's beyond what you can imagine, and that honestly that brings us to sort of our earliest conditionings, which is that everybody is pretty much born with this sort of, they feel that they're insufficient or they're not worthy to be their best selves. And that is often perpetuated by our whole society. So when you remove from it, come out of it like I did, only then can you really see just how limited you actually were. Even if you did really well in whatever you were doing in your jobs and whatever, which I was, but you just have no idea what potential you have, like when you're really a free bird,
But there's also another side to that I've come to recognize.
Yeah.
One of the first times I recognized it was many years ago when I was still very much in a different point of view than I am now. And I was just like working a regular job and I got laid off. And I'm sitting at home like anxious, super anxious, like all of a sudden you have all this time and the only one responsible for what you're doing with your time is you. And the first times when I tried to do my own entrepreneurial things, it's kind of scary because, when you work and you go to a job and someone just tells you, this is what you do A, then you do B, you're on your own. You got to create your whole structure. When you do things, what comes before what? And when you make mistakes, you only have yourself to blame. So I think maybe for folks listening, I think a big obstacle for a lot of those folks is the confidence factor there. And I hear you describing, traveling around the world, meeting with all these people. So I can tell by your story that your confidence built up in stages somewhat, but I'm sure you can think back to when you first got started and some of those nervous meetings, getting nervous. And now that you've had an opportunity to help mentor people in workshop groups, you probably have a lot more good information. I'm really curious about the subject of confidence. It's something I've always struggled with and still do. Sometimes I listen to myself talking and I'm like, does this guy know what he's talking about? So how do people know? No, I mean, I think people worry about that when they're like, oh, I'm not going to go online and say what I'm going to say because I'm going to look like an idiot. How do you get that confidence to break through that wall? I mean, you got to start somewhere, right?
You do. Great questions. Firstly, that is one of the, if not currently the top fear of everybody worldwide, is public speaking. Did you know that?
Yeah.
So it's, you're in good company. It's pretty much almost everybody's top fear. Many reasons why. But firstly, to your first question about the whole, you have to, there's no one to answer to. You have to basically, you have full responsibility. No one is telling you how things are going to go. No one's like figuring out your schedule. Yes. And self-discipline is the only answer to that. It means that you actually have to cultivate something called self-discipline. And it is something that can be cultivated. You're not born with it, but it is very worth it for the freedom. The more self-discipline you have, the more freedom you can have. But absolutely, it's something that you need to build in yourself. And it's actually more simple than people think. It's just about restructuring your lifestyle. So a lot of people's lifestyle is structured around, their work. If you're honest, it's not like your work is structured around your life, right? Your life is structured around your work, because it's like 80% of your life. So, you set your alarm because you have to make sure you're up at a certain time to get to the office or wherever you work, to do the targets that have been given to you. So all of that goes away and you now have to create your own agenda, which apparently it does sound really scary for a lot of people, but for me, that was like heaven. So it's self-discipline. It's self-discipline because you just learn to manage yourself. But that's a whole topic. That's a whole topic in itself. But self-discipline is the answer there. And yes, correct. There's going to be times where you're not going to feel like it, where you don't want to, where you don't know the answers. but it's always the knowing and putting yourself in that identity of who it is you're trying to be. Who is this person? Who is this person you're trying to be? Okay, are you the person that has been laid off, that lays on your couch and has no future? Or are you the person that's now classes yourself as self-employed and has a mission in life, and you're living that every day? And it's who are you positioning that in terms of what you're visualizing? Now, with your confidence question, absolutely, of course, it wasn't just there. I mean, if I go back to some of the first large stages I spoke on, like in front of thousands of people, yeah, hundreds at first and thousands, I was like in my early 20s. I was so afraid. And my boss at the time, my manager at the time, he was, he was a genius and incredible, but he was also extremely like critical. And so if you can imagine, you're already very nervous on a stage, right? Let's say, trying to remember what you want to say and what you're trying to convey. And you've got your manager at the back of the stage making like things like time or stop doing that or this, and you're like, oh my God. So my point is, though, action always trumps strategy. As in, execution is always going to be the solution over strategy. So yes, you're going to have to be okay with looking stupid and failing a few times. But the more you do that, the faster you do that, the faster you get better. So confidence happened for me, and also happens with many others that I teach, builds with competence. The more you build your competence, your confidence will naturally raise. Of course, if I'm going to be speaking to you now about, I don't know, astrophysics, I probably wouldn't be very confident about it because I don't have the competence in the field, right? So I could pretend. You can have very confident people that are completely untrustworthy and just, they come across as very arrogant, though. The energy is different. They'll come across as kind of just like, flamboyant or arrogant. But a competent confidence shows differently. So like when you were mentioning that, you know, from my posts and stuff you read, there's always this optimistic view and it's not some sort of, you know, end of the world type thing. That's because also I'm talking from experience and how I wish to see the world. And so with competence comes more and more confidence. And yeah, it was practice. It was basically from early on being put in the pit of the fire and dealing with it. And then eventually you build that as a muscle. Then, for example, when I was first asked to deliver trainings in German, because I live in a German-speaking country, my first thought was horror. Dear God, public speaking, and then in a language that's not your native language. Anybody that knows multiple languages will know like what I'm talking about, like how difficult that is. You already have to be putting, your best foot forward and so on and so forth. And on top of that, now you're trying to translate in your mind. And, you know, the jokes are never as good in a different language. You can't like, humor is different. Everything's different. You have to change the whole thing. But it didn't stop me because I was like, I know I can do it. I know I can do it. And the thing is, people usually stop before they even try. And the question is, what's the worst that can actually happen? So let's say, which by the way, I've conducted now many trainings in German and they all went extremely well. But if I'd have just listened to an initial thought years back, like, oh my God, how could I do that in a non-native language? I'm just going to say no because I'll make a fool out of myself. Could you imagine? I'm sure there's a lot of people that do that. I'll stop right there because of the thought of imagine how bad something could be. Well, what is the worst that can happen? They don't like it, and then they don't want ask you back. But is that the worst thing?
You don't have to do it anymore.
Do you see what you still would have got a massive learning experience from it. You still would have grown. You still would have gained competence in many different things. So it's still worth it. And when you go through that sort of little pep talk in your own head, when that happens to people, like, oh, someone's asked me to do this, and they start to imagine all these horrible scenarios, because that's what your brain does. It's trying to keep you safe. So it's imagining all the worst case scenarios, but what that's doing is causing you anxiety, and then you're going to react from that anxiety, which is to basically run away or not do anything or decline it. But instead, you want to push through anyway, do it anyway, because at the end of the day, that's the only way you're going to build it. If you're overthinking it, you're always going to find an excuse. So the quicker you can get to the action, the better. It is what it is. The people that actually do anything in the world are the people that take action. It's not the people that only sit there and think and ruminate. Like, they take the action. They write the book. They launch a podcast. They, start their business. They say to their manager what they've been wanting to say for 3 years. You need to, at some point, it's for your own self-respect as well, because it's always going to be there nagging at you. It's always going to be there. And it also will then affect your own identity, like how you view yourself. And over time, that will then shape your habits. It will shape the person you're being every day. So
that's great. Encouraging, inspirational advice. That's what I like to give to people. I feel like the people that have listened to the podcast that I create are generally people that have already looked into the subject matter somewhat, that have already watched some of Mark Passio's videos or already heard about natural law. But a lot of them need, I think, the encouragement to start speaking up. And that's what it took to get me here, was a lot of encouragement from certain podcasters, Mark Passio being one of those, kind of telling you, like, get off your butt, do this, right?
And well, here's another one.
Here's another one.
No one knows you. No one cares. No one cares as much as you care. I'm saying that in a positive sense. Most people care too much what they think other people care about what you put out. No one knows you. No one knows me. No one's. It doesn't matter how many people have viewed, seen, or whatever. If you bring yourself back, like humble yourself back down, it's like you care way more than anybody that has just watched a piece of your, whatever it is, your content, your thing, or whatever. So always remember that everyone's doing things. They're in their own heads. They're thinking about their own lives. No one is thinking about whatever little things you're nitpicking about yourself, which I know you are. Everyone's doing it all the time. They're like, oh, they'll rewatch themselves and they're like, that thing I do,
I kept
whatever.
doing my eye like this. Why did I do that?
Yeah, and the funny thing is, though, a lot of that stuff that for you yourself, let's say, whoever it is that's listening, maybe there's things about yourself that you're extremely self-conscious about, right? And because of that thing, you think everybody else notices that thing, and they hate that about you. But the funny thing actually is that those are the things that makes you endearing and different. So even though you yourself think that there's some weird quirks, well, nobody wants to see some monotone, so-called, like the same robotic type of person. The reason why they are even listening to you is because they like your flavor. They like perhaps your body language, the way you express things. Maybe they like your humor. Maybe they simply like your insight, your way of thinking, the types of questions you ask, the types of stories you tell, So it's much more about that. It's actually much more in you being yourself and like owning those quirks, right? Rather than trying to deny them, because that's when people notice it more,
So like when I was a kid, everybody made fun of me because I had a big nose, but now I love my big nose. It's awesome. It's part of who I am, and when you see me and my big nose, you know that it means something good's about to come out of this mouth. So I'm proud of it, but honestly, I've had a lot of trouble with confidence in my life. And you mentioned anxiety. Anxiety and depression are things that I've dealt with quite a bit, especially in the last couple years. And I've found my own coping mechanisms and skills to break through those things. But I wanted to bring up those things because I appreciate your wisdom on these subjects so much. And because I think it's what a lot of people are dealing with, especially with things that have happened in the last couple years. A lot of people have been at home by themselves, questioning everything. Relationships have gone bad. So a lot of people are dealing with what I think is negative self-talk. But I'm curious what you have to say on the subject of depression and anxiety.
Yeah, the two biggest psychological issues, if you will, or conditions that we have in the entire world: depression and anxiety. Like, it's global, it's everywhere. And it's been really messed up the last few years. It's only increased for sure. Basically, to begin, if you're someone who is in a depressive state, and neither of these things are conditions, some people might even get triggered by me saying that because they take it on as their identity. like I have ADHD, or I have anxiety, or I am clinically depressed. What does something class as clinically depressed? Is the number of weeks you've been depressed? Is it a level of sadness? I'm making it in a joking way here, but as someone who's also experienced both anxiety and depression, so I'm not speaking naively from it. But my point is that we attach to these things as identities, and that's what keeps them persistent. But basically, from the most fundamental level, if you are in a depressive state, you are focused too much on the past, okay? And if you're in an anxious state, you are focused too much on the future. I want you to think about it. What happens when you have anxiety? Too many thoughts going on about what could happen or what could be, yes or no? What's the future? What am I going to potentially do? That's anxiety. Depression is mulling over what could have been, what you've lost, regrets. Yes. So these are those two states, and that's why. What's the third option you got there?
Being in the present.
Literally, that's the only third option. So one is literally based on the past. Depression is all about the past. Anxiety is all about the future. In negative states, of course, you can also positively. You can reframe things. That's one of the biggest and most powerful skills that anyone can learn is reframing your own experience. Because as you said, negative self-talk, everything starts from the mind. Everything, your whole life experience is cultivated by the mind, then stimulated by your emotions, and then acted out in your behavior. Your emotions, though, and your thoughts are so closely linked that they both influence each other. So I want to be really clear about that. It's not always necessarily first thought, then the emotion. Sometimes it's the emotion first, then thoughts. But they're so closely, intricately interlinked. That's why mastering your mind and emotional intelligence are two of the biggest things that I teach. Because when you learn that, that is self-mastery. And you can, in any given moment, choose a different state. So people who are going through things like depression and saying like they literally have lost so much, they're sad about that, they maybe have a lot of regrets of the things that have been going on. You cannot change anything that has happened, number one. Number two, it happened the way it was supposed to happen because that's what happened. Let's be clear about that. It happened the way it was supposed to happen because that is what happened. So you thinking about retracing the situation and like, what could you have done? None of that matters at all. This is a complete waste of time. It's just you're trying to, it's your brain again trying to keep you safe by saying, we at least know the different scenarios, but you're keeping yourself in that depressive state. So know that it was meant to be because it's what happened. It is what it is. The only thing you can do is change how you would react to a situation in the future. That's it, right? With anxiety, it's that constant, it's when you start to get into overthinking mode about all the possible things that could happen, should happen, might not happen, right? And it's based from fear. Anxiety stems in fear. And it's just you're feeling like you need to be anywhere but not here right now. So anxiety, what's really important about with that one is anchoring yourself into your body in the present. And of course, there's many ways that you can do that. But let's go with depression. We honestly could do like 5 days on this, but let's go with depression first. The first one is, and there's even been scientific studies to prove this. So I just don't want people to underestimate the importance of movement, because movement is to engage with life. When you're in a depressive state, think about your physiology. You're very dense, you're very heavy, you're scrunched down, you want to just be seated, you want to lie down, you're very quiet, okay? Your physiology, when it comes to depression, is literally as close to death pretty much as you can get. You're not moving. You don't want to move. You're not initiating life. So anyone that's ever experienced depression, they understand what I'm talking about. So anything to do with movement, physically, is going to move you out of depression. This is not a joke. This is real science as well, if people need that. They literally did a whole thing with clinically depressed people that were on antidepressants and everything, okay? And all they did was change from walking 5,000 steps a day to 10,000 steps a day. After 5 days, depression decreased by 87%, and they all got taken off their antidepressants. 5 days, 10,000 steps a day. So I'm just emphasizing that, because if I say go for walks, people will just brush it off like it means nothing. It's one of the most powerful things you can do. I remember when I was in very depressive states, and the most important thing in my day, the best thing I look forward to in my day, was getting out that fucking door and going for a walk to a specific park, to a specific tree I wanted to get to. And when I got there, I was like, okay, I did it. I managed to do that today. And that's literally could be just your little victory for the day. I get it. I know how bad it is when you're in those states. And then that grows and develops day by day as you continue to do it. One day it's maybe 20 minutes, the next day it's 30 minutes, and so on. But physical movement will literally move you out of depression. Okay. With anxiety, it's about anchoring into your body in the present moment and getting back to safety, because anxiety stems from fear. It's a lot of fear. So what do you do to anchor yourself in safety in your body? Well, for example, one thing is you need to come back to your conscious state. So we have a conscious mind and a subconscious mind. And your subconscious mind is always working in the background. And it's all your habits. It's all your programming. You're not even aware that you're doing them. So let's say something's triggered your anxiety. Before you even realize what's triggered it, you're already in maybe a panic attack or something, right? If people experience those. So it's unconscious. It's coming from your subconscious programming. So you need to activate conscious behaviors. Again, use your physiology, because your physiology, your physical body is linked to your psychology. They're inseparable. So in anxiety states, anchoring into your body, walking movement might actually be not good for someone of anxiety, because it might be stimulating it. Instead, someone with anxiety, it could be more about doing yoga or meditation, or simply literally sitting with yourself and self-soothing. I don't know if you've ever heard of self-soothing. Okay. It's quite literally something as simple as, I don't know if you can even see me here, but you can literally, if you do this movement, okay, if you do this for just like, I don't know if you do a few seconds, when you're in an anxious state, if you just do this, and you don't have to say anything, but you can just be like, it's okay, we're here, we're safe, we're protected, we're loved. You say this to yourself, and you will instantly feel calm. Like it's so quick, it only takes a few seconds. So that's one. Again, I could give thousands, but I think those are two really powerful literal tools people can use for either of those two states.
Yeah, and I can say in my own personal experience, the walks were something that really made a huge difference for me.
Yes.
Going through a rough time, I had a particular little loop I would walk, and sometimes I would, kind of get like a wave of feeling, and I would say to myself, okay, we're going to go for a little walk, and sometimes I would even put it off a little bit because, it would be almost like, even though I wasn't in the best mood, part of me is looking forward to that walk just because it's something. And out there on that walk, I would be experiencing a little bit better feeling than I was before I went on that walk, and it's just something you can kind of give yourself, and it's proactive. So like, I really hear what you're saying. I've experienced it myself. And I think little steps are, how you get through any journey, right? So you just kind of get looking what's right in front of you and dealing with just that. So those are great tips and advice for folks. So what I wanted to do next in our discussion here, you've given people some great hints and tips. When the other thing I was thinking too is I do a lot of reinforcing with almost like I hired my own mental attorney to keep standing up for myself. And whenever I hear that negative talk, that other part of me has gotten better and better at standing up and be like, yeah, but he went for the walk, And so I would encourage people that to just stand up for yourself in your own mind. Every time you hear something negative, stand up and say the other side of it, or point out the optimism or the silver lining. We can
that's a whole practice in itself, in that you first need to even become aware of the self-talk. A lot of people aren't even aware of it. They just think that that's them. So that negative nagging voice in your head is not you. A lot of people don't realize that. They think that's them. That is your ego nagging at you. That other voice that you're talking about, that's actually your conscious mind coming through. So you actually are talking about a practice that is advanced. Not many people, like you, that is a practice you actually have to develop. So first is catching it out, like when it comes through. It's always good to add humor, to laugh at it and be like, God, you're being an asshole today. Like, just go away. I don't need to hear that stuff today. You know what I mean? Or like you said, like, no, that's not true. I went for my walk today. Like, shut up.
Yeah.
So you can really like play with it, because humor diffuses that heaviness very quickly. Because joy is a very high vibrational state. So anytime you interject humor, laughing at yourself, like, it really does help. So it's first identifying the negative thought and then, shifting it. Now, for some people, it's too difficult to shift straight to a positive thought. So let's say it's you're going to fail, you'll never be able to do that, you never amount to anything. For somebody, it might be too much to say, you're great, you're amazing, you're like, you can do this.
You have to believe it, right? You
have to believe it. If you can't do that, you at least neutralize this one, as in like, no, this is simply not true. Like, I can at least try. Like, I can do this. This is not true. Because you do need to ask yourself, is that thought actually true? No, it's not true. It's just a thought. You don't have to believe every single thought you have. Because guess what? You also have a thought about every 3 seconds. That's a lot of thoughts. So if you're constantly responding to every single thought you have, then yes, you're just going to be reacting all the time. But the conscious mind is saying, yeah, okay, there's some thoughts going on, but it's okay. I'll choose the ones I want to entertain, and I'll choose the ones I want to let go. Kind of like clouds going by, like, okay, I'll grab onto this one, and this one, let it go. But everyone holds on to all of their thoughts, especially if they're anxious. They're consumed by the thoughts. So it's knowing as well that you are not your actual thoughts. You don't have to believe every single thought, and you can either shift it into the positive framing, or you can at least neutralize it by just simply saying it's not true. Start with that. It's not true, because it isn't true.
Awesome. Yeah, that's great. Great advice. And I'll take it to heart myself. It's things I'm continually working on, trying to be the person I want to be. And, why is that important is the question that's coming up in my mind next. How does this tie into freedom of other people and our own freedom? Why are we taking this time to talk about, just working on the self, the skills they didn't teach us in school?
Yeah.
Why didn't they teach us these schools? I think it's the same question. But what I'm getting at is I was curious how you would tie freedom into what we're talking about.
Well, to me, self-mastery is the ultimate form of freedom, as in, when you're not a master of yourself, someone else will be your master. So without self-mastery, you are destined to be somebody else's slave. It's just, it's part of our inherent state. You have a supercomputer in between your ears, and that supercomputer is programmed from when you were born, from 0 to 7. It's programmed by all social conditioning. And after that, the only way to change it is through habit. That's why I'm talking so much about habits and things that you do that are your identity and your lifestyle. But when you don't change any of those things, you're not actually yourself. You're just a copy of a sort of standardized person that the system creates. So to me, when I look at it from like a bigger picture, universe perspective, I don't believe that the universe put you on this planet to just be a robotic copy of someone that follows somebody else's rules. I believe the universe put you here because you have a divine mission, a divine life plan, and that you actually are unique. You're a unique spark of creation, meaning there's things that you have that nobody else has, that only you can bring to this life experience. And if you don't realize what that is and actualize that in this lifetime, for me, that is a failure of life purpose. That's a failure of why we incarnated. And you'll have to come back and learn the lessons again. Not saying that's a good or bad thing, but I'm saying that considering where humanity is today, it would appear that people are more and more leaning towards not realizing self-mastery or self-actualization, and they're constantly being put into the trap of conditioning and just recycling because they are unconscious. And just because they're unconscious or unaware of self-mastery doesn't mean that they're happy. They're not. If you ask most people, they're actually very dissatisfied, they're very unhealthy, and they really don't like the state of the world or their own lives, right? So it's first about getting honest with yourself as well, because only from there can you then make any progress. So why is it important to freedom? Well, because to me, that's the whole essence of life itself. I don't think life is about being a slave to a couple of psychopaths that think that they rule the world and that we're all just a bunch of ants in a colony. We're human beings. We have higher intelligence. We have higher intellect for a reason. We're supposed to create. Look at our amazing creative abilities, what we can create. Imagine the potential there is when people all actualize that. It's immense. But people are given the perception that only a few percentage are, geniuses that can create and invent. That's not true. Everyone is a creator. Everyone is an inventor. You're just taught from a really young age. And like you said, why is it not taught in the school system? Well, I used to naively think, oh my God, I've just realized these really cool things that they don't teach in the school system that they should really teach in the school system. So in the beginning, I was like, oh, I just come up with some cool new ideas that we can give to the school curriculum to make school better. Little did I know, though, that they are fully aware of all these things, that they intentionally don't teach them because they don't want you to be a creative, free human being. So that's the thing. School doesn't teach you these things because they don't want you to be free. They don't want you to be creative. They don't want you to be happy and joyful, because when you're in that state, you're not afraid. And when you're not afraid, you're not easy to control. Okay, so you cannot control anyone when they're fully free. Right? So that's why the school system teaches you to be afraid of everything, afraid of life, afraid of each other, afraid of nature, Whereas when you're not in that state, when you're in a state of it's the real love, which is that you're fully connected with the universe, so you don't have that fear, you're connected with everything, then your life is a completely different experience. And I think everybody is being robbed of the real life experience. So yes, forgive me for being passionate about that. Like, I don't think we're supposed to be dying imprisoned. It's like there's caged birds, right? Their whole life they're caged and they never knew what it was like to be an actual bird. That's why they got wings. It's not to be in a cage all the time, being looked at, gawked at by humans, right? So I feel it's the same about human beings. Like, we are free-range caged animals, completely not tapped into our potential or the real purpose we're here. And I am doing the best that I can, as well as other teachers, to create that reality instead. Because yes, it is possible, but we need to be creating it, not looking and waiting for it, not thinking, hey, where is it? When's it going to come? We're creating it. So it doesn't matter what the odds look like. People often like to talk about numbers and stuff, but I try to not get discouraged by that, because it will discourage you. Like, people will oh, but you need at least this many millions. And it's like, think and focus about your circle of influence. That's all you can do. What is the best that you can do? Focus on that. Don't focus on the whole grand scheme of things, because it's going to overwhelm you and it's going to stop you from taking action. And that's the very thing that they want. They want you to not take any action. They want you to not believe that change is possible. And they want you to stay afraid in the system.
Yeah, and that system and that school system also very much encourage this individualistic journey. Like, it's all, each one person. And this is kind of a weird topic, because on the one hand, I'm saying, I guess what I'm getting at is we can do a lot more if we work together, right? And I heard you talking about having some experience leading teams and groups, how to do better teamwork. For me, that really strikes a chord, because one of the most unique experiences I've ever had in life was having the opportunity to be a facilitator on ropes courses and leading team challenge adventures, and seeing just how amazing, you can start with a group of people that barely know each other. And at the end of the day, they're doing this really complex task together and completing it. And I know it's possible, but we get so stuck being alone, and a lot of us are facing financial challenges, or people feeling stuck in a career, or they have, loved ones to take care of, sick family members, kids. There's a lot of challenges, and a lot of us have already been pushed down the road in one direction and then come to these realizations. And it's like, in order to get to that freedom where you know, you're at a pretty golden place. You're living what you care about, doing a job that is in line with your belief, your I don't like using the word belief. I like saying your morals or your principles,
Yeah.
right? You're trying to live in line with your principles. But like, and I'm getting closer there myself compared to where I was a few years ago. And so I'm trying to give some advice to people that maybe are where I was a few years ago or where you were 10 years ago.
Yeah.
And it's an obstacle getting, okay, you're working a job. Most people are working 40 hours a week or whatever. Then they're coming home and they got problems there, whether it's the family or the kids. And what we're saying is you need to build yourself up so strong until you can start using every little bit of your free time to start engaging yourself in a whole nother business so you can free yourself from the original one. It's a scary, hard thing to do. It's a lot to take on. You know, there's no simple path from my point of view. I'm curious to see how that strikes you.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny to me because people always look at the result and then they just assume it's smooth sailing. You think I didn't have struggles? You think it wasn't difficult? Like, this is the thing. Of course, there's a lot of sacrifice that comes in. I sacrificed a very well-paid, comfortable, full-time job, right, to go for my purpose. I had zero guarantees that it was going to work. I had no lined up clients. We then went into a pandemic. So nothing was like set up for me. It always comes down to, what are you prioritizing? So you said, I live my principles. Well, it's, what are your principles? What do you prioritize? And it's a process. So if someone, for example, wants to, like, we have areas of life. We have our relationships, we have our finances, we have our physical health, we have our mental health, we have our emotional health, we have our spiritual health, and we have our professional work. That's what I call the 7 healths concept, 7 healths of well-being, something I teach as well. If you try to go for all of them at once, of course you're going to say, no, it's all too much, I can't do this. So you need to pick areas that you want to work on and then go for them one by one. So for example, you could be currently working a full-time job that you want to transition out of, and perhaps you're in an abusive relationship, and perhaps on top of that you have financial issues and whatever, like the list can go on. But you pick one of those things and work on them first, and then the next one, then the next one, right? So for example, let's say it's that you want to leave full-time work, but financially speaking, you would not be okay, like for more than 2 months, let's say. Well, your first goal is going to be, okay, how can I make sure I have at least 6 months worth of income for living? That I can be okay for 6 months after I quit my job, and that I have 6 months to figure out and do all the other stuff. And I also have, by the way, all that time back now that I'm not working 60 hours a week at the job, okay? Now, in order for you to get the savings to have those 6 months, whatever, what you're going to have to do, you're going to have to change some of your lifestyle, aren't you? You're going to have to maybe not spend money on things that aren't important. Now, yeah, you're going to say there's people that like, oh, but they don't spend that much anyway. Things are expensive. No, it's not true. People spend a lot of money on garbage. They do. And sometimes you have to decrease your cost of living for a smaller period of time to then eventually get to that higher freedom. I don't like live lavishly or something like this, like, but to me, the freedom is way more important. The fact that I don't have to answer to anybody every day, the fact that I haven't set an alarm for 2 years. I get up with the sun. That to me is worth it. And every day I get up and I think about the fact that I have total freedom of my time. That to me is worth it every time, for, as in putting in my energy to keep like working hard for it, right? So it's priorities. And everything you said, yes, they're all correct, but I had all the same, exactly the same ones you said. And I'm sorry, they're all excuses. Eventually, you have to say, what do I prioritize? Currently, I prioritize working at a full-time job I hate, being in an abusive relationship, I'm giving examples, prioritizing my finances, my lifestyle, right? The amount of change someone can make, for example, if they downgraded where they lived, the amount of money that they could like have less in terms of expenses is profound. But would anyone bother to do that? No, because it takes real effort, doesn't it? Like you have to actually, but how much are you really sacrificing aside from a few square meters living space? It depends, like what do you prioritize in life? Because perhaps instead you'll use that money and that time to live life, like have experiences, not just live in your house, you know, like actually go out and have experiences in life. So that's the thing. It's like you have to actually have a plan and then work on one area at a time, but you have to do something. You can't expect everything to change whilst you sit there complaining. I've never had time for complainers, Chris. Can't stand them. I was surrounded by complainers in the corporate world too, and these were people who had fantastic lives. Nothing to complain about. They had great lives. Most people would die for their lives. And all day, every day, all I heard was in the coffee kitchen, can't stand this, can't stand that, this is horrible, this is terrible. People will always find an excuse to complain and to just have an excuse to not change and to not make the actual effort. So yeah, guys, sorry, it takes effort. It takes also courage to take risks, to not know what's going to happen and follow through anyway. And that's where the self-discipline comes in, because what it means is that you will do whatever you need to do to make sure it works. And guess what else happens when you do that? Is you're trusting in the universe, and the universe will start to open doors and things for you that you were not expecting. Because when you're expecting, you're controlling. And when you're trying to control everything, that's not from source, that's not from universe, that's from ego. So if you want to just be here like, well, I want to guarantee that I'm going to, you know, if I quit my job, that's ego. You can't. Where is the guarantee? You'll be waiting till your deathbed. It's about knowing what you want, gaining the what you need to do it, to just start, and then going for it anyway. And again, what is the worst that can happen? Okay, let's say after 2 months, something didn't work out that you want to do it. Do you need to get another job then? Go and get another job. Like, they're everywhere. Do you know right now that everyone's resigning and the companies can't even hire anyone? It's not like it's actually difficult to get a job today. People are literally left, right, and center. The companies are begging people for work, to work, because no one wants to work. They don't want to go to these jobs anymore.
Why would you work when you could just get paid from the government for?
Well, and that's what that's a mindset. That's the thing. So it's like, if you want to get paid by the government, well, then you're also supporting the very system then that you're kind of. So it's who are we talking to, right, Chris? Like, if we're talking to people who want to get government payouts, well, they're probably honestly not the kind of people who are going to be listening to what I'm saying. So and honestly, I don't need them to listen to me. I'm talking about people who actually care about their own conscious growth, that want to make a difference here on this planet, and then actually can activate that inner will to do that. We have something so powerful within us, this will, this drive, this passion, right? This is something that is just, it's so innate in the human spirit. Like, it's just, when you see that spark in someone, that can activate so many other people around them, because you're like, oh, that person's like, their will's on fire, you know? And that is drastically missing in the world right now. Everyone's just so blah, and feeling sorry for themselves. Sorry, you're feeling sorry for yourself. Like, when you learn how to do all these tools I was talking about, you will create the sort of foundations you need to then create the positive outlook. Is it? Like, if I didn't have an optimistic outlook, I wouldn't be doing the work that I'm doing, right? If I thought the world was going to be ending and that we're all just destined to be slaves and in dystopia forever, why would I even be bothering to doing the work that I do with so much passion? Then I would have just carried on as well, sold my soul to the system. I'd be in an executive role, getting paid really decent money, traveling the world, and just, you know, living in a mansion or whatever, and firing people and doing whatever, because, like, whatever, right? Satanic mindset. It's all about me and getting ahead. No, it's a choice you have to make, and there comes with that sacrifices, but they're actually sacrifices that afterwards you'll realize were not actually sacrifices. They're sacrifices that are creature comforts, that are society telling you the things that you should care about, that eventually you realize mean nothing. They're none of the things that matters in life. When you're on your deathbed, are you really going to think about what job you had? Are you really going to think about how many taxes you paid? Are you really going to think about how many emails you sent? Are you going to think about how many customers you served a coffee, right? No, you're going to think about what actually mattered. Were you aligned with truth? Did you have real connection with people? You were talking about this teamwork thing. Like, it is so powerful when we come together and do things like properly collaboratively. It's exponential, but everyone's always out for themselves because they believe that you have to stab other people in the back in order to get ahead, but that's not the case at all. Like when we collaborate and do things together, we create magic, like you saw in those workshops. It's the same thing I see as well. When I get to do a workshop in real life, some of these people never even met each other yet, and they work in the same team. They work in the same team, but they're all working from home, right? And then for the first time, they come together in a workshop that I'm running, and by the end of like 2 days, there is this connection that they've now created that cannot be broken. It's something completely different. You can't cultivate that through not trying. It takes effort. We're in this like demand like culture now where everyone wants everything instantaneously with no effort. Well, I'm sorry, but that's not the way it works. If you want a meaningful relationship, you need to actually invest time getting to know someone. You want to live your purpose, you actually have to invest time in getting to know who you are. You also have to invest time into learning skills, mastering yourself. Like, yes, you do need to invest time, but where are you currently investing your time? Watching a Netflix show for 5 hours a day? Come on, don't lie. Right? It's what are you investing your time? Going out for a beer? 10 beers? It's all a choice.
Yeah, and what's amazing is there are always people out there that are willing to help and give advice and work with you, but you have to take the initiative to meet those people or reach out. And sometimes my heart beats a little bit sometimes when I call someone I've never talked to before, or first get on one of these Skype meetings with somebody who I've seen online, and you just have to break through that, and amazing things can happen. And so I'm also like you. I have a lot of hope. I do see that this evil that's kind of owning the world right now, it's a limited time thing. It's just a matter of time until freedom does its thing. And so I'm with you on that. I really see a better future. I want to try to imagine that better future. I don't know how long it's going to take. I don't know exactly how it's going to pan out, but that was going to be the last thing. I was going to just ask your opinion on how you keep cheerful when it looks pretty grim.
Well, so like I spend the majority of my time. So when I'm teaching, obviously it's a very action-oriented thing. So you're getting a very sort of passionate side of me. The majority of the time, I'm actually very quiet and I'm very observant and I'm in nature. That's where I spend the majority of my time, connecting with nature and with real people, like out. And every single day, Chris, I have an amazing experience. I have an amazing experience with connecting with the universe. I have an amazing experience with connecting with animals and nature and so on. And always with a person that I needed to help, without fail, in some way. And all that is just because I'm open. Like, I'm not trying to figure out what you were just saying, like, how long is this going to take? When's everyone going to awaken? Because honestly, it may not even be in our lifetime that we see the result, but that's not going to stop me from doing it. Because what is the other option? What is the other option? Shall I sulk myself to death on the couch? Is that a better option? To me, it's not. To me, the better option is to live life fully. So even though like there's a lot of grim things, and first of all, having purpose is what's going to get you out of bed every morning, like, because you're so driven, because you feel and know that impact you're making. Whether it's to one person or 1,000 people, it doesn't matter. It's an impact. And I always every morning I wake up, I always thank the universe for another day to be alive. I do it out loud. I say, thank you for another day to be alive. And I smile and I hear the birds singing. And the first thing I do is get out of my house and go out and be in the world. People are too sedated. They're constantly indoors and they're disconnected. Today I planted some things on my balcony and I had my hands all dirty in the soil and all that. And I was like, oh, this feels so good. It feels so good to have my hands dirty in the soil. And I've got some roses and I planted some tomatoes. And like, I even get like teared up thinking about that. To me, that's meaningful. That's real life shit, guys. Meeting someone that could have been suicidal and for a second you just smiled at them and you changed their life. Like, you don't realize how much our interactions every day are actually completely perfectly synchronized. Whether you believe in that or not, it's real. It's so real. Like, I laugh. Like, I almost a few days in a row now, I keep seeing 777. Like, every time I go, I'm like, thank you. Good morning to you too, universe. Because 777.
For me, it's 333. I'll wake up and it'll be 3:33, or you should see how many screenshots I have on my
That's
phone.
early.
3:33.
Yeah, and that's like things like that, and just these small things, like, and so how do I stay optimistic? She was saying is I engage fully with life. I do not let this narrative get me down from the experience that is life itself. Every day we are literally given an opportunity to be alive. And every day, if you approach life with those new eyes, and I always say, like, universe, show me what's in store today. And that's because I'm fully aware that's not common. I'm fully aware that most people live out of a program. That's why I teach people things to get out of the program. Because if the first thing you do in the morning is alarm, wake up, throw your clothes on, get out the door to go to work, it's just a program you're running, but you're not living at all. You're living, it's like taking a tape recorder, pressing rewind, and then the next day you're doing the same thing. So there is no life, there's no sustenance. So every time you just try something a bit different, take a different route, speak to a new person. This conversation we had today, this is a brand new conversation, right? We're meeting properly for the first time. And as you said, sometimes you get a bit nervous or whatever, but this connection would not have happened otherwise. So it's like, it's always going to lead you to really amazing things that actually make life meaningful. Otherwise, yes, if you want to control everything and know every outcome, then you'll live the same day over and over again. And you might feel like you're in control, but you're certainly not going to feel fulfilled. That only comes from you being open, have the same curiosity as a child, just being in awe with life. I'm usually, when I'm walking down the street, like I'm smiling at this nothingness, like at sky. I'm like looking at the trees and the sky. I'm like, and I don't realize I'm doing it. And when you see someone who looks at you and they catch it. They catch the wave of the happiness, and that's what I'm saying. Like, you don't have to be some superstar on a stage. Just share a smile with a stranger. Give someone 5 minutes of your time. Look at them in the eyes and actually have some presence. Listen to them. So many people are starved of that connection. That's what it takes. That's what people really want in life, is some true, genuine connection and fulfill, like, meaning. That's it. Not the other crap. So every day, can you just give that little bit of like true, genuine connection with whoever it may be? Perhaps it is a stranger. Perhaps it's someone really significant in your life. Either way, it's still going to be worth it and meaningful.
Love it. That's the my symbol behind me, my tree of life. And that's what I mean by ending evil. I think that's how we do it. We appreciate and harmonize with the connectivity that is the interconnectedness, that is reality. And that's what love is too. It's recognizing that and being harmonizing with it, being part of it. So I think if anyone didn't get inspired listening to you talk today, they weren't listening, that's for sure. I think you did a great job of motivating, inspiring, and giving a good message to folks. So I know your website is Live in Training, LIVIN training, right? .com?
Europe.com.
No, livintrainingeurope.com, correct?
Yeah, it's only got Europe in it because the URL, the domain without it was not available. But anyway, yeah, LIVIN trainingeurope.com, livintrainingeurope.com. I have a podcast. I have lots of free material. I have videos, audios, bit for everything. There is courses for people who want to purchase and actually develop skills, but there's also plenty of free content that can also change people's lives. I've had many people write to me from just the free content saying that it really shifted them. So just go to the website and all the links are there.
Yeah, great. And then I know you post on Facebook a good bit. I've seen you there. So thank
Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, TikTok. I mean, really, I don't care about the platform. I just try to get it wherever it can go.
Well, you're doing an awesome job of it, and it's beautiful. Your words are very helpful, and I'll look forward to re-listening to this episode myself, because you had some great tips in there that I'm going to take to heart. So I really appreciate your time, Melisa. Thanks for joining me today, and I'll look forward to future collaboration and teamwork.
Yeah, I would love that, Chris, and I'd love to hear a bit more from you as well on the next one and some of your insights. You clearly have I like your way of thinking, and I also just want to acknowledge you and say thank you for doing what you're doing, for doing the work, putting the truth out, and uncovering more of yourself to the world. No matter whether you feel it's uncomfortable or awkward, you're shining your light, and that's what's important.
Right on. Thank you. Appreciate it. Great talk. All right.
Good
I think
talk.
I'll go ahead and stop it there. And then if I can figure out how to do that. Hello, this is Chris Jansen. Welcome to the End Evil podcast.
It was a crazy year, 2020. I think everybody kind of was losing their mind one way or another. But if you're listening to this, you made it through.
And they're making mistakes, and people are starting to awake.
There is a science of human freedom.
It's also a spiritual journey.
A person under hypnosis will start to see that there's something wrong. Something is wrong.
It's great that you know what you've come to know, but until there's an outlet for that information and you start creating and putting your creations out into the world to teach other people so that they can become as knowledgeable as you.
Life. What is encouraging life is good. That which takes away from life and growth and creativity is not good.